Hello there. I'm so glad you're here tonight. I am Kat Thompson, and you are listening to Fate Magazine Radio. This has been a big week. Y'all all know my best friend, my partner, and all kinds of, paranormal adventures, and just a good person, Lori Dorsey. This was the week that she went down and we worked in her condo for the first time. And I'm here to tell you that you find out how good of friends you are when you do that. We had the best time. It's on the Gulf Coast of Alabama. And so when we weren't busy busting a hump and, you know, cleaning carpets and cleaning walls and getting everything ready to, receive all the things that were going to be coming in, I took her to play a little bit. I took her on a dolphin cruise. And for those who know me, you know that if I am in Gulf Shores, I am going to be on a dolphin boat at some point in time during my trip. And I think she thought I was nuts because I love doing that so much. But I mean, dolphins are a lot like humans, right? They communicate, they are interesting, and people think that they're just showing off, and I think they do a little bit, but basically they're cleaning themselves in the wake of these boats. But they're so fun. It's so cool to spot them. And it was her first time to ever do that. So she stayed in the middle of the boat where she could see on both sides, eye level. I get on the front of the boat and ride like I'm Cleopatra or something. Hey, Lori, I'm talking about you. But it was so much fun because those dolphins just showed out. And so that was a really good experience because she did so much, y'all. Got appliances, getting, window panes replaced, doing all this stuff. And it's her place. So it was just such a blessing to get to see her so happy. Plus the dolphins and good food. And I turned her into the Gulf. There's all these places. We got to go see Mark Fultz. We just had the best time. We got to spend time with Ron and Denise Pridemore. And y'all all know that we are tight. So that was a real blessing to get to see them. And so, basically, we got to do spooky, chatty stuff. Didn't investigate really, but she's been to Fort Morgan with me. And when it's not hotter than blue blazes, we will go again because she almost sweated to pieces. I thought I lost her there for a minute when we were there. But it's a good time. And I can't wait till we get to do it again, which will be in 2 weeks, because now I'm taking her to a Parrot Head party. She is going to be so surprised, but it's really fun because we became friends at a paranormal event at a Titanic museum in Tennessee. And it was obvious we were kindred spirits, and we have been tight pretty much ever since. So when you get a friend like that in your life and they're making a life change, you try to make it as comfortable, fun, and interesting as you can for them. And not only that, but she's the one that knows, what I'm going to be saying if I croak before she does and come back and find her and just boom. So I'll do that. But anyway, I am really excited because it's been a big week. It really has. We did all this stuff. I got back home, getting my house back in order. We had, it has been an education, but, went to a 3-year-old's ragdoll game today, which was amazing. She's the only girl. She's sassy. I don't know where she gets that from, but it was just a really good time. So it's been big. I just thought that I wanted, because we've got a new edition of Fate magazine at the printer right now. I've had a lot of people ask me, when's it coming? When's it coming? And, Phyllis had some health challenges. She had been getting things back together. She had both hips replaced. Um, she's a wild woman. Phyllis Gaudy is. She is bad to the bone. She was out chasing goats not long after her hips were replaced. As she said, who else was going to do it? The goats would have been eating in the neighbor's yard. Somebody would have brought them home. She's just a badass. But I just wanted to celebrate. I know I've done this before, and it's something I enjoyed when I did it. But I have all these episodes. They're not episodes. They're editions of Fate magazine. And I have a slew of them. And I have some articles marked already that I thought that I would share. And some of these are kind of poignant. As I was going through, I found the edition that has Phyllis's, it's not an ode to her, but it's discussing Rosemary Gully. They were best friends. They were pretty much partners in crime. They're very much like Lori and myself. And it's Phyllis's article that she wrote when Rosemary died. So it's that was kind of poignant for me to read. I don't know if I'll read that or not. I might. But when you're talking about a queen of all things anomalous, right? Two special women who developed a very good rapport and were kind of ahead of their time. And they were both fearless. Phyllis is still fearless. Phyllis will be fearless forever. But speaking of hips, I want to give a shout out to Carl Alberson, who has had surgery, got his done, and is sitting in that chair running the show tonight. And I was just like, what are you doing? I was in the other room and I heard the click and I was like, he is not sitting there. And I walked in here and he was sitting there, right there, having all the fun. Probably not that much fun, but depends on what they gave him. So I just have to give a shout out to Carl because he's always amazing. He's a good friend to me and he's just a good human. And I can't wait to someday taste one of his smash burgers. I'm just going to put that out there. Now, these are not in any particular order. I was just going through and popping stuff in there. And y'all have seen some of these covers before because when I did this the last time, I shared these with you. And I think the covers are so amazing. I can't wait to see what the new one looks like. She won't tell me. So I do know that the new one has an article by Rick McCallum, and he's going to get McCallum. Got to say that right. But and it's a good article. So y'all are going to have to get that when it gets out. I might share that with you after the new wears off. But in this one, this is January, February 2011. And ESP on the Moon was the primary cover. That's the graphic. And it also included the New Madrid earthquake. But the article that I picked out is something that I thought was kind of interesting. And y'all, I am going to read to you. If you don't want to hear my voice the whole time, I don't even know what to tell you. But it's just me. So I'm going to have to drop the specs and I'm going to have to look at the magazine. But there are some cool graphics in some of these stories. So, and it's really interesting because this goes so far back. The author is Jack Grimes. This is Jack. And he is a politician, an astrologer, a stockbroker, and writer of short stories. He lives in Wilmington, Delaware at the time of this article. But he says, and look at this graphic. Let me get it to you. Isn't that cool? So don't look at my nails. So it says, while most people have heard of the headless horseman of Sleepy Hollow, hardly anyone out of the state has ever heard of Delaware's decapitated Phantom Night Rider. These events allegedly took place during the Battle of Couch's Bridge, September 3rd, 1777. Hey, Tom McNicholas. When the opposing forces of Generals Cornwallis and Maxwell met one another in Delaware. The English were trying to recapture Philadelphia. The American troops' task was to stop them. During this engagement, one of Maxwell's soldiers, Charles Miller, got his head blown off by a cannonball that had to hurt during a British artillery barrage. The British fleshed out the rebels, winning the Battle of Couch's Bridge with the loss of only 30 King's regulars. It's estimated the colonists probably suffered about the same number of casualties during the fight before taking flight. This is the point where the historical record of actual events leaves off and fantasy and myth-making take over. Witnesses claim to have seen Miller's horse gallop away, either with his corpse still seated in the saddle or being dragged behind the animal, having a foot hung in the stirrup. That's the last anyone saw of either the unfortunate soldier or the stallion, at least in this life. However, Miller's ghost may have put in an appearance at the Battle of the Brandywine, fought on September 10, 1777. It was reported that as Maxwell's attack began that morning, a headless specter riding a white horse was seen amongst the English artillerymen with its saber drawn from the scabbard, chopping off the heads of cannon crewmen so they couldn't fire on the Americans' positions. I guess tit for tat. The men of Maxwell's light infantry had no doubt that it was their fallen comrade Charles Miller taking his vengeance against those whom he blamed for his untimely demise the month before. As the legend continued to gain popular momentum amid Washington's Continental Army, it was later told how Miller's ghost had intervened, saving Washington's life by appearing just in the nick of time to lop off the head of a British sniper who had the rebel commander-in-chief fixed in his sights. While the area is developing quickly these days, thanks to I-95 providing easy access and the urban sprawl created by greedy land developers, the Headless Horseman can still be seen to this day in rural areas. Sometimes the air thickens suddenly around the area of Welch Tract Church and Couch's Bridge, where the fighting occurred. On these nights, a sort of haze will settle over the woods. Then the Headless Horseman rides again. People who find themselves in these woods, maybe weed helps you see them, in these woods when the atmosphere changes suddenly become dizzy and disoriented. Then, shortly afterward, the ghost is sighted. Usually hoofbeats are heard prior to witnesses actually seeing the spirit. It's been observed at times carrying what is presumed to be its own severed head. At other times, people passing by have caught a glimpse of the apparition, which seems to be searching for something, presumably its head. At times, the apparitions of a headless figure mounted on horseback appear suddenly, then vanish into oblivion just as quickly. Once Miller's ghost has departed, the air returns to normal, and witnesses quickly regain their composure. The aspect of losing one's wits and being unable to focus one's thoughts seems to happen not only to those who see spirits of the dead, but also to people who wander about inside crop circles or sacred sites like Stonehenge on the solstices, or equinoxes. Perhaps they're briefly brushed another level of reality where living mortals are not supposed to go. Some people who have seen the Headless Horseman say his ghostly steed will charge at them, covering vast distances in no time, while its rider will swing a saber in a vain attempt to behead them. So it's seen that Charles Miller has become one of the spirits in chaos that the book of OASP mentions, still fighting the American Revolutionary War centuries after everyone else has called it quits. So it shall always be until people renounce the ways of war forever and learn to live together in peace and harmony. You know, I know people that feel that they've seen the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. And I don't know what I think about these things. I know that I've seen things I can't explain physically, right? And I've investigated places that are so completely radical in their energy that if there's not something occurring there, it's missing a good chance, right? You know, I've been in stone circles in Scotland. I've been in you know, the lava cairns, which are the circular stacks of stones that are actually graves of witches, ostensibly. The energy in these places is really bizarre. So, do I feel like I'm lucky that I wasn't confronted by something with ill intent based on the energy? It would have not been a happy thing. Yeah, I do. I think I'm pretty lucky. Do I think that a headless horseman can swing hard enough to take off a head? They haven't done it yet, to anyone's knowledge. And if it's a specter, I just wonder if it could, you know? But it's something to ponder. And also in this edition, there's and this again is January, February 2011. You've got Accepting My ET Heritage, which if that wasn't so long, y'all would have already heard about, and you may still. An earth-shaking event, the New Madrid earthquake of 1811 and 1812. The Modern Oracle, solar weather affects EVP. I do think that's true. I think that a lot of things can affect what is allowed to come through, because I feel like it's coming through the ether. And if there's physical diversions of that, if we have an energy burst, if you're near an energy grid, if you're in thunderstorms, I feel like that can ramp up energy and help things to happen. I also think just rain stops that. So it's a damping effect. I base that activity levels both at Sloss Furnace and also at the Old Paulding Jail. Because if you have a rainy night, Sloss is dead, as it were. And the same thing happens at the Old Paulding Jail. The energy just drops and you're not going to get much, if anything. So just an observation of like, 20 years experience there, maybe more, a lot more. We're not going to go into how much. But The Practical Cryptid Hunter, and that's by Shepard Johnson. I think that's a great article. Poulter Fairies, and that's, y'all know that happens. So then Surreal Estate, How to Buy That Haunted House, and Kathleen Clark wrote that. That's a good article. Thoughts in Space, a story of another headless horseman, which we just did, scalping in the Old West. It wasn't just the Indians and it wasn't just the Old West. I do think some of that goes on now. I think it's gang related too. George Stathakis, Andrew Hind, and Maura Da Silva. He went over Niagara Falls, smothered, and now haunts a theater. The Sheriff Who Was Not Wyatt Earp, and Long John Speaking. So, and we may come back to some of these because we do have a regular column, I See by the Papers, and that's Phyllis just talking on current events. And My View of the Unknown by Hilly Rose. I have some of those selected in another edition. Now, Tom McNicholas, I hope you are doing just as well as you want to. It's nice to see you there. And this is January 2008, and y'all have seen this cover. So let's see. There's too much light. Postergeist Attack is that article. People with No Brains. And actually, this was the 60-year anniversary. So, Lizard Gods of Hawaii, I'll read that one sometime. It's pretty cool. Now, this one is titled True Mystic Experiences. And it's looks like this is by Margaret Ree. And John Ree, age 17, is also pictured there. I know that light's bright, but there you go. There they are. I believe this is written by Margaret. But the warning dream. I knew I was dreaming. Everything moved in slow motion, the same dream as it was last August, and the August before that for 2 years. It was haunting me. I woke startled again. Negative energy fields were surging to the surface. My heart beat wildly. That was the last time I had that dream. I had no idea then, but 20 years later, I would know the meaning of the dream in the personal and metaphysical realms. Go back 20 years earlier. It was August 7th, 1960. Our beautiful baby boy was born, and we named him John. It was a joyous day, to be sure. He really was a beautiful baby. We carried him home to the congratulations and good wishes of loving family and friends. For 2 weeks, we were busy settling in with a new addition to our family. On August 29th, after a busy day, I went to bed to have the first of 3 dreams. It was a bitterly cold day. Snow was falling and silently covering the world with its pristine white blanket. Suddenly, the wind began to blow. The crystal flakes swirled around, and I could not see very well. Icy snow hit my face, stinging and mingled with my tears. I can't get to my baby, I cried, my feet stuck in the snow holding me back. I jumped up, my heart pounding. I ran to my baby, picked him up, and held him ever so tightly. I sat in the rocking chair beside his crib, holding him in my arms. I would not let go. At dawn, light gently filled the room. I could see the dancing bears on the curtains and the matching wallpaper. Crickets were humming, and the air was warm and still. Baby John was sleeping, snuggled in my arms. He was safe. This was, after all, August. No snow, and all was well. And for a year, it stayed that way. Just after John's first birthday, the same dream haunted me. Frightened and upset, I tried to find some answers and not to focus on the negative force around me. Another year passed and it happened again. John was now 2 years old and doing fine. He was our pride and joy. Then I wondered about the karmic doctrine, which holds that all actions have consequences, and decided to show less pride in how we thought our son was so special. For the next 20 years, I had no fearful dreams at all. One day, my now grown son said he did not feel well. At first, I did not think too much of it, but he could not eat, and he kept saying he was not himself. Our family doctor admitted him to the hospital where many tests were taken. At first, the tests came back negative. But then the phone call came. To this day, I hate the ring of the telephone. He was terminally ill, the doctors said, with a rare form of cancer. It made no sense. He was so young, strong, and beautiful. On Valentine's Day, February 14th, I sat by my dear son. His last words to me were, "I'm dying." I felt my heart shatter, breaking forever with a pain severe and permanent. He slipped away like a gentle bird. Days later, the funeral cortege wound its way along the cemetery road. There was snow everywhere. Beneath the newly fallen snow, wet and pristine, was ice. Plows had made a path. The line of cars followed the hearse up the hill to the new section of the rural cemetery. Suddenly, the hearse got stuck on the ice-covered road. We too in our car stopped. Then the hearse began to move, but we could not. The wheels just spun around. I jumped out of the car, my feet in the snow. Icy hail stung my face, mingled with my tears. The wind whipped me. I tried to run, but strong hands gripped my shoulders. My husband and someone else were pulling me. "No," I screamed. "I can't get to my son." All at once, a blinding light covered my eyes and face. The spirits were there. They had gently tried to prepare me years ago. Now I knew the meaning of the dream, the warning. It has not lessened my pain. I cry out to the spirits, but now there is only silence. They have completed their task, but they will be back with my son for me. And so I wait. In loving memory of my beloved son, John, Margaret Lee. You know, I can't imagine. I have precognizance. I have it a lot. And I can't imagine that. This story is especially poignant because we had a child in our family who passed away. And it's so, I can't even imagine that pain. And I'm very fortunate that I didn't have to go through it. I had 2 children in the same car wreck, and that was enough. To not have them come home would have decimated me. And it did the family member that happened to. So precognizance is sometimes not the best thing. But I think that to recognize that is such a personal and horrific moment is really amazing. And the fact that she was with her son, that she was with him through his life. She had no idea that that was what was going to come through from that vision. Or from that dream. I just feel so for her. And I think it was so brave of her to share that experience. And I don't know if I would be that brave and strong. That I would like to think so, but I just don't want to find out. So Margaret, thank you so much for contributing that to Fate, because it was really powerful. Now, this is an article by Hilly Rose. That is Hilly. And he does this column pretty often. He's one of the people. And I find it interesting. As y'all know, I have a friend, June Lundgren, who is a brilliant animal communicator. She has helped me with a couple of my dogs over time. And she's brilliant. So this particular edition has animal communication in it too. So, but this is Hilly's view of the unknown. Are y'all bored yet? Or are you loving this? Somebody tell me. So, I have been vaguely aware of the talk about serpentines in the paranormal world. In fact, I've been vaguely aware of snakes. And okay, for those of you that don't know, maybe this is your first time ever listening to me, or, I seem like I'm so brave and strong or whatever. Indiana Jones said, why did it have to be snakes? I would not have gone if it were snakes. Okay. Snakes and myself are absolutely opposed. I have reached down to get something and there was a snake close to my hand. It did not bite me. It did not chase me. It just, it froze. I backed away. And, what I had dropped, I was like, you can have that. It's yours. Just stay there. And so I was told later, a garter snake. I didn't know that. To me, every snake is venomous. Okay. Not even going to go there. So this article was tough for me to bring to you, but we're going to get through it. And and for those that don't know, I had somebody ask me, what do you drink all night? This is sweet tea. I'm Southern. It's what we do. However, I have been known to have other things in other cups, but this is my sweet tea cup. And I never drink anything that I shouldn't when I'm doing my shows, because I don't want to get silly and giddy. I don't know. Y'all might like that. It's just fun. So here we go with the snakes, okay? Lori, don't laugh. Oh, Tom, you don't mind snakes. Tom McNicholas is bad to the bone. I'm just telling y'all. So he's pretty cool. So, okay. I have been vaguely aware of the talk about serpentines in the paranormal world. In fact, I've been vaguely aware of snakes and the role snakes have played in the history of the world. I've known about snake charmers since I was a boy. I know shamans all over the world utilize snakes in their rituals and healing ministrations. I know people who say they have been abducted and the entities aboard the spaceship were reptilians. I know there were cults in ancient times that worshiped snakes. That is very true. Having read the Bible, I know there was a snake in the Garden of Eden, and when Moses cast down his rod, it turned into a snake. Yet somehow I've never really given any thought to the intensity and depth with which snakes have insinuated themselves into our cultures, past and present. That changed when I interviewed English researcher Philip Gardner and read his book, The Serpent Grail. And now that was when Hilly was doing Fate Radio. It was an interview on Fate Radio. So, to quote Gardner, the snake is intricately linked with magic and mythology in almost every culture. It is seen as the personification of wisdom and goodness. Don't buy it. It is the personification of evil, thus revealing its implicit duality. Snake worship is a worldwide phenomenon, which many experts believe can be traced back via India to earlier civilizations. The tales of snake worship are as ubiquitous in ancient and modern cultures everywhere, as are the tales of the Great Flood. We see snakes depicted in ancient cave scratchings, in religious paintings from over the centuries, and in literature that includes the Bible. Some even think the halos of the saints are symbolic of snakes. Not any saints I talk to. Snakes are also associated with the devil. The fact that they slither into and out of the earth gives rise to the thought that they are connected to the underworld. Many religions worship snakes in one form or another. According to Gardner, snake symbolism goes back through the Greek, Egyptian, and Phrygian, I said that wrong, cultures, and to this day, the Rosicrucians are the self-proclaimed inheritors of the wisdom of the snake. Much of this history is symbolic, and Gardner claims St. Patrick did not remove actual snakes from Ireland, but cleansed it of the snake worshippers. Going back there it is, that tongue. Here we go. Going back 6,000 years, Sumerians suddenly had a language that could be preserved on tablets, and just as suddenly, had skills unknown previously to men. Thanks to Zachariah Sitchin, who Phyllis Scaldi got to interview. You can see it on YouTube. Studying these tablets, we are told ETs came down from the skies and gave this knowledge to the people. Many descriptions of these unknowns, sometimes called watchers, say they were reptilian in appearance. It also suggested that many mated with women while they were here. Is it possible then that we are all descended from reptilians? That is a very popular school of thought. Just saying. It brings to mind the research of Dr. Rick Strassman from the University of New Mexico, working on a U.S. government grant concerning the effects of psychedelic DMT. It would take that for me to play with a snake. Some of the volunteers saw clowns, some saw grays, and many others saw reptilians while under the effects of DMT. No suggestions were made to these volunteers beforehand. They simply reported what they saw while under the drug. In fact, it is not a bit unusual for people taking psychedelics of all kinds to report seeing snakes. Certainly, shamans around the world, including American Indians, will verify this. I'm not sure where our modern image of the Greys comes from, but I recently revisited Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The ETs look only vaguely like the benign Greys with big eyes. The friendly ET, and ET the extraterrestrial, is also benign in his visage. The ET on the cover of Whitley Strieber's book Communion, to my mind, is clearly serpentine in its visage. I don't know if I agree with that. I think he looks a lot like E.T. But I'm going to have to go back and look at that. Many artists have softened it over the years to make it appear more friendly. I should ask Whitley that. I think I might. Going back to summer, Gardner says a religious cult worshipped the serpent and drank its venom mixed with blood. They were cured of disease and their lives were prolonged. Chinese medicine has used snake venom for 5,000 years and today cures many diseases just as the shaman around the world have for centuries. Even our Western medicine is beginning to understand the benefits of snake venom in strengthening the immune system. It's also very good for thinning the blood, is my understanding. The venom does that. And some of them cause clotting. So, balance. King Arthur's court, real or imagined, was rife with snakes. The dragons of old were really snakes. Queen Guinevere was known as the Snake Queen. Can thousands of years of documented human history be wrong? What's so special about the snake? Why not the elephant? The peacock? The deer? I could deal with the peacock. Can thousands of years? Same paragraph. Many of us have an inherent fear of snakes. What happened in our history that created this fear? Is there something in our subconscious or DNA that makes us fear, dream about, and relate to the snake in a totally different manner than we do to any other animal or other human beings? Are the reptoids still with us? According to Sitchin, the aliens came from planet Nibiru to gather gold. They restructured the DNA of the proto-humans already here to work as slaves in the mines. Are we still doing their bidding without knowing it? Do they wear human masks to keep us from fearing them? Because in truth, we are part of them? Are the full-blooded reptoid descendants waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? Are humans the misguided ones who make war on each other and foul the environment? Are the reptoids waiting for us to come to our senses? Or is this all snake oil? I like him. I really do. I like him a lot. So, I'm going to share this also from this edition. Is my proof of survival. And this is going to be factual accounts by our readers of survival after death. And the first is called Vision of Roses. In 1978, my mother was very ill and dying of cancer. I had to leave my own family to care for her and my sister, Virginia Ann Krug, who was helpless and unable to care for herself as she had MD. My mother mercifully passed away after her 84th birthday. My sister, who was very nearsighted, was lying in bed just a few days after our mother had passed, when suddenly the most beautiful roses she had ever seen appeared on the ceiling above her. My mother loved roses, so my sister said, "Mother, I know that's you, and as you are showing me these beautiful roses, I know you're all right." After she said that, the roses slowly disappeared. We were both convinced it was our mother letting us know she was happy. I still believe that, and it's a good feeling. And this was by Dolores Ben from New Richmond, Ohio. And then Suburban Diner. Suburban Diner was my friend Sylvester C. Scott's favorite diner on Route 17 in Paramus, New Jersey. It was the only one he patronized, visiting once a month for over 30 years. On July 25th, 2000 at 7 a.m., Scott picked me up from work. On our way home, we passed by the diner. "Let's have breakfast," I suggested. "Okay," he said. The parking lot was empty. Ours was the only car parked at the diner. Bewildered, we looked at each other. We entered the front door and walked toward the second door that would lead us to the diner's interior. I was ahead of Scott, but before I stepped in, hands still clutching at the doorknob, I peeked through and scanned the area. The dining room was empty, completely devoid of people. Lights were subdued, and I could hardly see. Dining tables and chairs were neatly arranged as if waiting for diners. The counter bar was surrounded by high stools and empty of people and food. It was so eerie, I almost backed out. Then I saw an elderly white couple standing outside the counter bar. The woman was in front of the man. She was in her late 80s, short and petite, wearing a white waitress's uniform with a black apron. He was in his early 90s, wearing a tan suit with a clip on ribbon tie instead of a necktie. The old woman smiled, so we went in. Scott and I chose our table, followed by the old woman. We ordered breakfast without a menu. We knew what we wanted and how much it would cost. Silently, she took our orders, left, and was back quickly with our food. The old man was not around. We ate in silence and were in a hurry to leave. After we finished, we waited and waited. After 45 minutes, I told Scott just to leave the money on the table. On our way home, we didn't discuss anything. I wondered why the old woman was still waitressing at her age. The following morning, we went back to the diner. We saw 3 cars in the parking lot. There were 3 young men inside the diner in animated conversation. One of them came to the door and told us the place was not in business anymore. 2 days later, Suburban Diner was demolished. In its place is now a gas station. Who were this couple? I believe they were ghosts of the former owners of the diner. To serve patrons one last time was their desire, and they filled it before their beloved diner was demolished into oblivion. And I've got to tell you, this was written by Sylvester Scott and Herminia C. Delvaux. And, you know, that's pretty much, that would be pretty exciting, I think. Let's see. All right, this next one is written by Jack Tom Payton. That's him. And it's called A Promise Kept. See, this is why when I'm saying submit an article, submit an experience or a story, because Fate Magazine is made up of things written by people like you. I have an article that was printed. In fact, it should be in this next one that's at the printer now. Rick McCollum has an article. I mean, it's very cool, you know, to see your own experience printed. But it's very cool because I'm a paranormal investigator. I love to see things that other people have experienced, and that way I can ascertain if maybe that would apply to the case that I worked on, or if I come across something, I can just kind of look at it. But just good stuff, right? I like it. I think that I'm going to read something different. Because speaking of evidence, lack of evidence, absence, the amazing Godwin, well, there we go. Godwin is the columnist. So, and absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I've heard that a lot lately from various quarters. It comes in real handy. One of the more recent uses of this saying has been by Donald Rumsfeld, but it has greater currency perhaps in paranormal and especially UFO circles. The last time I actually saw it in print, it was used by Stanton Friedman, and that's true. Ironically enough, the phrase seems to have originated with the late Carl Sagan, a leading skeptic. I don't believe he was using it to justify a belief in UFOs, however. He was probably defending the continuance of SETI. If he were aware of the uses to which quotation has been put, he would be gyrating in his grave. For a long time, it was very fashionable in skeptical and scientific circles to say that there is not a shred of evidence for something, usually something paranormal. Until I heard that, I'd been aware that the smallest unit of evidence is a shred. The other unit that comes to mind is the mountain. That's true too. It used to be common among atheists to say that there's not a shred of evidence for God or for any sort of survival after death. In that case, I suppose it depends on what you mean by evidence. The atheist meant scientific evidence of the sort that can be verified by repeatable experiments. Never mind that God doesn't work that way, or that material evidence is meaningless when dealing with transcendental concepts. You want evidence? Well, the heaven and earth are full of his glory. Aside from that, there is not a shred of evidence outside the Bible for many of the events, people, and places that it mentions. However, Sagan perhaps inadvertently came up with an irrefutable counterargument to the shred statement. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Quite true. But what is? This cute little aphorism means that you can assert anything you like, no matter how off the wall it will be, and no one can disprove it. In some cases, your assertion may indeed be true. So what if no acceptable concrete evidence exists that this planet has been repeatedly visited by extraterrestrial spacecraft? You'd think that sometime during the years, during the millennia, that this planet has been visited by someone. Someone would have discarded an alien Kleenex at least. But no, there's nothing. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Yet, however appealing it may be to resort to this wordplay, and however undeniable it may be, it is no argument at all. Sure, UFOs may exist despite the absence of any acknowledged hard evidence. But what about the little orange men who dwell in your commode tank? Don't see them? Well, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Maybe they're there after all. And I'm going to tell you that I have had a very interesting conversation with the man who runs SETI, Seth, about that topic. And the man who runs SETI does not believe that we are visited by craft. So it's interesting. Last time I talked to him, I was like, did you see anything yet? Is there anything you can't explain at all? No. No was his answer. So now this is another Godwin article, but this is a little different. Okay. This, y'all know Janice Carlson, who does our New Year's predictions every year, right? She's brilliant. She's a great psychic. She's a great human. She's really one of the nicest and neatest people I've met through this job. And I've met a lot of cool folks. But this is the Amazing Godwin. The Amazing Godwin from Spirit. He's coming from the other side. Let's see what this says. You want to? You knew I was going to do that if I found that. So, Phyllis Goldie, describe what happened when you realized you were dead. David, part of my spirit stayed behind with you as spirit matter. Subatomic matter can be in two places at once. It was my home, and part of me has never left it. Who did you first see on the other side? Guide? Anyone you know? The first person I saw was my mother. She was smiling. I wasn't sad about anything except perhaps no longer being able to be physically on Earth for you and Fate Magazine and our staff and friends. What did you do then? I rested and got reoriented, met with friends, relatives, and pets on the other side. I am my higher self. Were you aware of time as we perceive it on Earth? Time is not the same in the afterlife. We have to use Earth clocks to remind ourselves what time it is on the part of the Earth our loved ones are on. What level of theosophy are you at now? 2, 3, 4? I guess using that classification, I'm on 3. Not much emphasis put on that with me by the powers that be. They seem pretty happy with how evolved my soul is. It is rated by one's sense of connection, love, and generosity with others. Some spirits here have flunked that test and need to work on evolving themselves. It's either that or they get sent back to Earth or another planet to learn these lessons the hard way. Okay, before we go any further, David was Phyllis's life partner. And so being able to have this conversation really mattered. And I can't believe the openness and the sharing that she's doing here. But she is that woman. Just going to put that out there. What was your life review like? Not a life review per se. Some more evolved spirits ask you how you feel you did in physical form. If they disagree with your assessment, they'll let you know. And they'll let you know why they disagree. A program may be put into place to help you evolve. They haven't put me in any program, so I guess I made the cut. David is smiling as he says this. I do volunteer to help with various angel missions on Earth, but I'm not required to help. It's in my nature to volunteer, especially when people or animals are suffering. Such missions are spiritually fulfilling, but take a lot of energy to carry out. David also says, the next ice age will not happen suddenly. It will happen gradually as the polar vortex keeps falling south. That would be an example of when spirits and angels are needed by the people on Earth. So I think that he found out. And, there's so many people. I did not know David and Phyllis as a couple. I do know how spectacular of a human Phyllis is. So to me, it doesn't surprise me that she would reach out to David and get information like that, or that he would give it to her. But I do find it funny because so many people, before they do this, before they cross, kind of poo-poo life after death. I don't think he was really poo-pooing it, but you need proof. You need solid evidence. Seth needs solid evidence that there's UFOs, and his job is running SETI. It's interesting. Seth would not be running SETI if he were not hoping, if he did not have a feeling, perhaps. But he swears that he's not had anything to make him think that they're out there. I don't see how that's possible. So I know that we've had communication that nobody could explain. Just interesting. And in fact, he told me just to call him up and he would come on. I think I'm going to do that. I want to do that. Because he knows that I'm like, how is that possible? How do you not know? I think that's fun. So anyway, here we go. This is one of my favorite editions. I think it is so pretty. And it's one of my favorite covers. There's a lot of my favorite covers. I like everything. There we go. I just love angels. This contains angels, H.P. Lovecraft, Anunnaki. I love the Anunnaki. There's also an article in here by me, Winchester House. So I read that to you last time. Now, I chose this article by Steve Smith. Can you hear it now? And that's him. I hear beyond the range of sounds, said Thoreau. So, that's his quote before he starts. It was in June 2021 that the 13-story Champlain Towers South condominiums in Surfside, Florida collapsed, killing 98 people. In a New York Times interview, Eliana Monteagudo, a 64-year-old woman who got out alive that night, attributed her survival to a voice she heard in her head. "Run," it said, as she saw a crack moving down from the ceiling of her apartment. As she slipped on a dress and sandals, the voice went on to say, "Don't waste time putting on a bra." She blew out the candle dedicated to the Virgin of Guadalupe, the Indian maiden who is the patron saint of Mexico, grabbed a few essential items, keys, a purse, and pills, and fled. Mrs. Monteagudo did not hesitate to share her experience despite the stigma sometimes attached to hearing voices. Ms. Monteagudo's story reminds me of an incident reported by Brian Clegg, 1955 and still going, a science writer who is generally skeptical of anything related to psi. When he was 12 and attending a camp on an island off the coast of Scotland, an emergency arose, which required his best friend Paul to be back at camp. But Paul was running on the beach. When Brian caught sight of him, Paul was at least 100, this is going to be, says years, it's yards, away, much too far to attempt to reach him with a shout. As Brian tried to catch up to his friend, he felt a stick in his side and stopped. At the same time, Paul turned and ran back to where Brian was standing. Paul said, "I heard you shout, 'Stop, Paul.'" But what Paul heard was only in his head. In this case, Brian's unspoken words seemed to be telepathically conveyed to Paul. How can we explain these auditory hallucinations? Clearly, the examples I have mentioned aren't manifestation of an illness such as schizophrenia. Hearing voices sometimes has another explanation. In some cultures, hearing voices is considered a gift from on high. An alternate possibility is that it may be a psychic phenomenon. In a survey of 17,000 people in Great Britain, almost 10% reported having at least one similar experience. A voice told Ms. Monteagudo to run, and a voice told Paul to stop. In each case, the voice they heard proved to be very helpful. These kinds of experiences are fleeting, so they would be difficult to study in a laboratory setting. Well, turning pages appears to be difficult in this one. All right, well, that's because that was the end of that. So as you go on through here, there's an article by Warren Gray that depicts a plasma strike on the Columbia. And I do recall that. But at 82 seconds of flight time, a piece of foam about 2 feet long and over 1 foot wide allegedly broke away from the external fuel tank bipod and struck the reinforced carbon RCC thermal protection panels on Columbia's left wing at approximately 500 miles per hour, damaging the wing powers. So this is an interesting article that I'm not going to read on here because the Columbia is very fresh to me for other reasons. Now, this is actually pretty fascinating. And I know I've shown you this. Robert Schoch at Göbekli Tepe Earthquake predictions. There you go. And I would have loved to have interviewed him. He had passed away before I became aware of just how cool that would be. I didn't know of his work until about 10 years ago. But this one actually has another session with David from Spirit that I wanted to share because, like I said, Janice Carlson is the psychic. Phyllis Galdi is one of the most down-to-earth women I've ever met. And people always want to know what happens after we pass. And this is the best way. I know I already read the first one, but I think this is something that we all are curious about. What happens after we pass? This is really, this is somebody that wasn't sure that he thought anything did, right? So now that he had, Janice is able to bring him through to Phyllis. And I think it's interesting because Phyllis, like I said, is one of the most practical and pragmatic women I know. I believe her, and I believe Janice. So, the Amazing Godwin from Spirit is told to Phyllis Galdi by Janice Carlson. Phyllis, describe what happened when you realized you were dead. This is what we already read. This is the same one. I don't know why it's in a second edition. That must be a typo. Let's see what we have over here. So I'm not keeping anything from you. It's just this is an article by David. I'm going to read this. Okay. In answer to a letter from a perceptive reader in this month's report from the readers, as well as several authors in print and on the cursed internet, I would like to point out that the stars are not visible in the moon's black sky in the Apollo photographs because it was daytime. The sun was shining brightly and drowning out the light of any stars. You can't see the stars in the daytime on Earth. Why would you be able to see them during the day on the moon? Because the sky is black? Well, the sky on the Earth is blue during the hours of sunlight because of reflections from tiny particles in the atmosphere. I just lost my place. What color would the sky, if the Earth, like the moon, had no atmosphere, what color would the sky be? That's right, black. And you still wouldn't be able to see the stars in the daytime. All of this doesn't even address the fact that it's very hard with normal camera settings, shooting at a normal speed to capture stars in the night sky on film. Take a picture of a friend standing in the front yard at night using a flash or other artificial lighting, and the sky will be black with no stars. No hoax, no warehouse. But the real question is, why is it so necessary to prove that everything is a deception and or a conspiracy? I ask that all the time. In some cases, conspiracies do exist. The plot to kill Lincoln involved several people who laid their plans in a boarding house and elsewhere. Whether Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton was involved or not remains an open question, although mainstream historians very much doubt it. But was there a conspiracy to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Many signs point in that direction, but was there? And who was behind it? Moscow? Havana? The mafia? But does everything have to be a conspiracy? The bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City? Is it true that no ATF employees were present that day? the disaster of 9/11. Why would the Jews do such a thing? Isn't it far more likely that Muslim fanatics did it because of their hatred of the United States stemming from its support of Israel? Of course, 9/11 was a conspiracy, but with Osama bin Laden at the head of it, as he now admits or claims. Yes, our government has deceived us at every turn. There have been heartless experiments carried out on unsuspecting victims. There have been outright denials of the obvious, such as the dangers of radioactive waste or various undercover tests. The administration stonewalled Watergate. We made war on Iraq because of government lies and misdirection. And of course, UFOs. Author and TV personality John Greenwald Jr. has proven conclusively, with documents obtained from the government itself under the FOIA, that the public has been consistently lied to for the last 60 years. Trust no one. And he knew all that before he was on the other side. I mean, I can go for days on UFOs. I can go for days on conspiracies. But I just love that. I really, really love that. These are things that Phyllis found in the newspaper during the period of publishing this in January of 2008. I just love that cover. So, and one of the articles that she found was a Reuters article. And it says, Yeti footprints found. A team sent to Nepal in search of the Yeti for Sci-Fi Channel's television series Destination Truth say that they may have found footprints created by the legendary creature. Armed with infrared cameras and other high-tech equipment, the team spent a week in the Khumbu region of Nepal near Mount Everest. They discovered the roughly 1 foot long tracks on the bank of the Manji River at an altitude of about 9,000 feet. I don't believe it to be a bear. It's something of a mystery for us, said Destination Truth's Josh Gates. Josh said the giant footprints found on sandy soil were relatively fresh, some left 24 hours before we found them. He told reporters the print is so pristine, so good that I'm very intrigued by this, adding that the findings would likely prompt further investigations by the team into the legend of the Yeti. And we all know where that took him, right? Still looking for it. Now, then the Leaning Tower loses title. A German church steeple in the village of Surhusen has replaced the famous Leaning Tower of Pisa in the Guinness Book of Records as the world's most lopsided building. Guinness officials confirmed the award after measurements found the church is leaning at a 5.19 degree angle compared to Pisa's tower's 3.97 degrees. The church was built in the middle of the 13th century and its 90-foot tower was added in 1450. And that's reported by ANOVA. And I had no idea that there even was another leaning church. I guess a lot of things do. Oh, you want to hear about a spooky skin-bound book? Yeah. An image of the face of Father Henry Garnet, an English priest executed in May 1606 for treason, is said to have appeared on a 17th century book believed to have been bound in the condemned man's skin. The book, called A True and Perfect Relation of the Whole Proceedings Against the Most Barbarous Traitors, Garnet, a Jesuit, and his confederates, went up for auction in December. This is not the first time an object associated with the man is said to have undergone this eerie transformation. Really? According to the legend of Garnet's straw, after his execution, a young man named John Wilkinson picked up a blood-soaked piece of straw from the scene and took it with him, only to discover later a section of the straw had taken on Garnet's likeness. That's reported by the BBC. Interesting. So I just love this stuff. Why did I have that here? That was that. Now, this is another one of my favorite covers. And I don't know. I keep looking up and seeing your I don't mind snakes thing. I can't decide if I think that you're fearlessly brave or just, weirder than me, which would be pretty weird. Now, this is the dolphins one again. This is a different The Amazing God One from Spirit. And it's about dolphins and water and other stuff too. Are you ready? We asked David, okay, and this is again, Phyllis asking the questions, Janice channeling him. We asked David about dolphins from his perspective, and he said that they're horrified at the shape our oceans are in. I have heard the bottom mile of our oceans are so polluted there is no life there and everything is dead. He said no, but we're certainly headed that way. He said the people he communicates with on the other side often live near rivers and lakes. Water has a magical quality in the afterlife. He says that it helps connect souls like ribbon wrapped around a package. He said there are oceans up there with fish, whales, and dolphins. Growing up in North Dakota and now living in Minnesota, I was curious about the weather in the afterlife. Does it snow? Rain? Is it cold? Does it storm? Are people ever uncomfortable? David said, when you're in the afterlife, you're in a place where the weather is always sunny and perfect. But if your soul is evolved enough, you can travel to any sort of weather you like, any season you want. Think Star Trek's holodeck. I like that idea. David said he hasn't seen anyone who is physically uncomfortable, but he says some can be emotionally uncomfortable if they have karmic work to do, sort of like an AA meeting for those who have some maturing to do or need to review their actions on Earth. It's mainly nice in the afterlife, but there are still goals to strive for. Our souls are always evolving. If people in the afterlife need drama in their lives, our earthly life conflicts provide it. There can be respectful debates, and sometimes are sent back to Earth for do-overs. That makes sense. I asked if David had ever gone out into outer space and seen aliens. He said he's not gone out into space yet, but he might like to in the future. Again, any planet you might want to visit can be simulated, so why leave the comforts of heaven? He mainly studies aliens through holographic files. They keep to their own kind, he says, and they don't like to be stared at or studied any more than humans do. That's an interesting perspective. Some of them are public speakers, and he has listened to one of their presentations, but it was pretty much an 001 class, boring in its simplicity. He laughed and said, maybe they think we're too stupid to grasp anything more complex. So there's that. And I can just hear Phyllis laughing about that. So this is the one that I had wanted to read. UFOs and Ghosts. And y'all can't see that. Good graphics. There's always good graphics. Let's see. Yeah, this isn't bad. UFOs and ghosts. What is the connection, if any, between ghosts and UFOs? We, the human Perceivers, we're the connection. By Diane Tessman. Question 1. Are ghosts a phenomenon of the past? By definition, ghosts should be in the past, being perceived by fellow humans there. Think of a street in old New Orleans around 1800. Women scurry around in long dresses, carriages with horses rattle by, and at the dock, slaves are unloading cargo. Watching the unloading is a beautiful brown-skinned woman in simple clothing, head wrapped turban style. She seems troubled. Move forward to 2013, and down by the New Orleans waterfront, a young man suddenly perceives the misty, translucent form of a mixed-race woman wearing a head wrap, looking worried. This would be a typical ghost sighting. Often the ghost is from a turbulent, colorful period of time, and often the ghost is unhappy. Seldom does the ghost look like solid flesh, but rather has a phantom-like appearance. Do y'all think that's true? Are the ghosts that y'all see translucent? Or obviously not real? Hello, Ghost Magnet. Love to you. All right, question 2. Are UFOs a phenomenon of the future? We don't know what time UFOs are from, let alone their origin. But in another 100 years, humans may have flying craft which nullify gravity, rather than operating aerodynamically like our current airplanes. Therefore, our craft will be able to stop suddenly, make right-angle turns, and maneuver in ways that airplanes cannot. So, when a man steps out for a smoke in 2014 and suddenly spots a UFO, we assume the UFO is physically present in 2014, hovering above this man. Instead, what if this man had actually perceived a future event, just as the young man who saw the ghost in New Orleans was seeing the past? Question 3. Does the perceiver influence what is seen? One of the most bizarre premises of quantum theory states that by the very act of perceiving, the observer affects the observed reality. Researchers at the Weizmann Institute of Science recently conducted an experiment demonstrating how a beam of electrons is affected by the act of being observed. I'm familiar with this. The experiment, headed by Professor Mordechai Heilblum, revealed that the observer's influence on what actually takes place increases with the amount of observation that occurs. Heilblum and his team concluded that when a quantum observer is watching, the behavior of particles will change. When behaving as waves, they can simultaneously pass through several openings in a barrier and then meet again on the other side of the barrier. This meeting is known as interference. However, interference resulting from waves can only occur when no one is watching. How do they know? Once an observer begins to watch, the picture changes dramatically. If a particle can be seen going through one opening, then it's clear it didn't go through another opening. In other words, when under observation, electrons are being forced to behave like particles and not like waves. In a sense, human observation seems to cement these objects into solid reality, when in pure waveform, a number of potential outcomes exist. It may be that few people have an ability to change perception more than the rest of us. This might explain such things as why some people have seen multiple UFOs through their lifetimes. I'm going to tell you, that one, yes, and holographic, yes. Question 4. Oh, this is good. Is human perception affected by the Doppler effect? A quick reminder of what the Doppler effect is. There are 2 Doppler effects. One that deals with sound, which is commonly heard when a vehicle sounding a siren passes and recedes from the observer. The received frequency is higher compared to the emitted frequency during the approach. It is identical at the instant of passing by and is lower at the recession. The second Doppler effect, dealing with light and motion, is slightly different from the sonic variety. A celestial object moving towards us shows a blue shift, Doppler effect. and a celestial object moving away from us shows a redshift Doppler effect. Is it possible that ghosts and UFOs also involve electromagnetic anomalies, the distortion of light as it usually acts and at times then dilates? A window opens in the past or the future. What do you think, oh great ghost magnet? Tom, Lori? I don't know what I think of that. This is good. You should know this one, Michelle. When we spot a ghost, do we perceive the past through a peephole in time? Let's assume that most of the time we are standing in the center of the Doppler effect. We perceive neither through the perception of the red shift nor the blue shift. We are the normal dot in the center. This is what we call present. It's a reach to think we're normal. Ghosts could manifest because suddenly the perception of the human observer has shifted back through time. This could happen as the observer is subject to the light and time fluctuations, which may happen once in a while within human consciousness. Instead of standing in the center of the Doppler effect, she suddenly has the redshift view of time. Redshift leads to the past, which we are moving away from. That's an interesting concept. When we spot a UFO, do we perceive the future through a peephole in time? Is the observer's human consciousness suddenly functioning through a window of the blue shift, no longer perceiving the middle dot from the present? I don't know, right? So the answer that they provide here is perhaps some UFOs, rather than visiting us, are actually going about their business in the future, albeit in the same physical spot where we see them moving. I realize that many circumstances regarding UFOs suggest that they are here with us in the present. There is often more than one observer, perceiver. Also, CE2 means there is physical evidence that the UFO was here, like burn marks on the ground or radar confirmation. This doesn't happen often, or at least we are not told about it. Big difference. However, in a number of reports, UFOs simply leak out as if a peephole into somewhere else just closed. Perhaps the UFO is simply going about its business in some other time. And in these cases, simply because space-time allowed the observer to perceive non-temporal events. I don't know. Good to see you. And thanks for being here. Much love to you too. Now, why do ghosts usually belong in the near past and not to the cave days? I don't know. That's actually interesting. I've never seen a ghost that was from farther back than I knew about, to my knowledge. I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty certain that's the truism. I have not seen something whose attire I didn't recognize or perceive as something historic in my period, or in my educational background as far as Native Americans, workers in plants, and that would be part of the history of the location they were in. Michelle, if you went to go eat dinner, I could have used your input on this because you see everything. But how often does someone see ghosts trudging from Africa to Europe as part of the early migration in which humans moved out of Mother Africa? How often does someone see a Neanderthal getting ready to throw a spear? Not often. Stories suggest that observers have seen regiments of marching ghostly Romans and Appalachians of Celt warriors, but these are rare. Sometimes ghosts appear to be family members. A friend of mine tells me that her grandfather still haunts the family home. Grandpa is from the recent past. So it may be that the red shift perception of the past works better if the ghost is nearer to the present. As the red shift continues outward in the rippling pool of time events, it grows more distant from the observer of the present. In other words, 1800 AD may be easier to perceive spectrally than 12,000 BC. Who knows if the UFOs we spot in a blue shift of perception are from a few hundred years or 2 million years in the future? Well, now I have questions, right? I love things that make me ponder and have to go and do some more research. I'm going to be doing some more research. Is the connection between UFOs and ghosts simply the phenomenon of time itself? Lori, you've been doing some research on this. Maybe not directly under that title, but you're seeing some of this. So UFOs shift perception to the future while ghosts shift our perceptions to the past. 99% of the time, we stand on the dot in the center called the present. Is human consciousness subject to the quantum physics of the cosmos? Why would it not be? It seems impossible that human consciousness is a phenomenon outside of all the other wonders of the universe. If we are a part of it all, then we must consider that phenomena happen to us that are directly within the workings of the vast universe all around. Phenomena for which real perceptions and results do exist. I tell you what, Diane Tessman's website, www.earthchangepredictions.com, and her new book at the time, this is, show me a date. There's no date. How is there no date? Of course. But at the time, her new book, The UFO Agenda, is available on Amazon. So that would be The UFO Agenda by Diane Tessman, Tessman, earthchangepredictions.com. I love stuff that's provocative. I think that it's so much fun. Drives me crazy when I don't know exactly what's going on with that. And there's an article in here by somebody that I think is one of my favorite authors. He's one of my favorite people. And his name is Micah Hanks. And I've interviewed him. It's been a while. But this is Beyond the Known Part 2. And it's Animals Talk. See how long this is. This is an older edition because this is back when Micah was an editor for Fate and was doing the Gralien Report podcast. So I'm going to read this because I think it's fun, and I know Micah, and it's bound to be interesting. So this is Animals Talk, ? So what does the fox say? In evoking this annoyingly popular meme, we find beyond its feather-brained exterior that it bespeaks a very meaningful question indeed. Do animals speak? And to what depth does their communication resemble that of humans? Okay, I have dogs. My dogs do communicate with me. They do not speak like humans. They do. The dogs I have now are, one is a full Aussie, the other is an Aussie golden mix. So, and they do communicate. They communicate with each other very well. The question is age-old, and similar anthropomorphisms have emerged throughout the years as a variety of mediums. One princely pop singer famously asked us to consider what it sounds like when doves cry. And though it remains debatable whether animals of the avian variety are capable of showing emotion through the release of tears, there seems to be little doubt that other animals do it. Consider the baby elephant who graced many a newsstand in recent months after it collapsed into tears once its mother had rejected and attempted to trample it. Even more recently, a similar case that involved an Indian drug lord who had kept an elephant captive for several years told of how the animal purportedly wept tears of joy upon its release by activists. As they neared, the animal, sensing his imminent release, seemed to begin weeping in response to the presence of his liberators. Oh, I would have had to take that person down or just let the elephant. The innately human act of anthropomorphism is something that is less often deeply considered than its incidence alone, and thus an entire host of silly insinuations have been made over the years regarding things that animals purportedly do, whether or not their conscious decisions about these acts are legitimate. It could be argued, of course, that humankind habitually does the same thing as the search for alien life. How presumptive indeed that we would project our values, ideas, and evolutionary traits that govern our sensory view of space and time on beings we have never met and which may have evolved to interact with matter, or the absence of it, in vastly different ways from you and me. And recognizing that intelligence may not manifest from one life form to another the same way it has for humans, we need not look so far away as deep space in order to change our perspectives on what defines intelligence or how it may manifest. Marine biologists have long been fascinated with the apparent intelligence exhibited by cetaceans, dolphins in particular, which appears to range from varieties of communicative relays to control and manipulation of elements in their physical environment for various purposes, whether practical or purely for enjoyment. Consider the way dolphins exhibit an incredible mastery over the creation of ring-shaped bubbles, which they form by shooting air through the water ahead of them and nudging it with their noses to propel the odd-looking ringlets forward. That is a thing. And he says, if you haven't seen this, I would strongly recommend doing a search online for dolphin bubble rings. And you too will be amazed at this remarkable little game our dolphin brethren play from time to time. I just love dolphins. Recreational activities alone, while noteworthy, may not directly imply intelligence, but in the case with dolphins, what scientists believe they are actually capable of comes strikingly close to being on par with human levels of brain aptitude. In a study overseen by Lori Marino of Emory University in Atlanta, brain scans conducted among dolphin subjects using MRIs can determine that relative to their body size, their brains are quite large and structured for self-awareness in much the same way that facilitates emotions in humans. Similar complexities were found to exist in the neocortex region of the dolphin brain as well. Over the course of dolphin evolution, the animals have gone through decreases in body size that are proportional to increases in brain size. Additionally, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 million years ago, the necessity for enhanced communications between members of their species led dolphins to even further increases in brain function. In many ways, dolphin evolution has mirrored our own, as the long lineage of hominid species leading up to humans of the present day have relied less on overall physical mass and more on a big brain to survive. Dolphin brains are 5 times larger for their body size when compared to other animals of similar size, Marino told Live Science. In humans, the measure is 7 times larger. Not a huge difference. Obviously, this statement isn't meant to undermine either species. It underscores the many similarities between us. Yet, perhaps we shouldn't remove the larger cetacean species from the discussion entirely, as it has been surmised animals the likes of the blue whale, our ocean's very largest, may literally carry out a function some have likened to being engineers, whether or not they go about this entirely in what we would call an intelligent capacity. Writing for Wired earlier this year, author Katie Collins discussed how the presence of whales and of all things their excrement serve a unique role in regulating our oceans. In a process known as whale pump, the creatures feed at depth, then release fecal plumes near the surface, which in turn provide nutrition for plankton. Because of the vast distances whales travel, they help to circulate and distribute nutrients only found in certain areas of the ocean more widely. Even in death, they provide food for species on the ocean floor, many of which survive solely on sunken whale carcasses or whale falls, as they're more poetically known. Who would have thought, considering mankind's dependence on ocean life, that not just oceanic ecosystems, but humans also could benefit from the leavings or maybe even the excrement of our world's largest cetacean species? It seems obvious that we should view these animals with reverence, whether or not their role here constitutes intelligence on par with our own mammalian kindred. There are levels of influence such as these, whether or not wholly intelligent, that orchestrate a grand and eerie symphony that plays on silently behind all that we do, even as we are deaf to it, if nonetheless catches up that it nonetheless catches us in its swaying cosmic rhythm. He does have a way with words. Small organisms are essential to life in the sea, but they are not the whole story, said Joe Roman of the University of Vermont. In the same line of thought, perhaps humankind would do well to consider the ultimate role it plays within the life cycles on our planet and whether our actions make a comfortable impression on other species in our midst. In the relative sense, humans are small organisms. Though our actions are essential to us, we may still take for granted the greater role species around us are playing also. In fairness, maybe humans aren't the whole story either. So, you should really read some of his books. The two that are listed here are the UFO Singularity and the Ghost Rockets, and you can go to micahhanks.com to get more information on him. He's absolutely fantastic. Definitely a good human. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure because I'm running out of time. And okay, this is kind of personal for Phyllis, but I've mentioned to you that she and Rosemary Ellen Gully were very tight, very good friends. And I only got to meet Rosemary a couple of times, and I was so impressed with her because um, she was such an intrepid researcher, and she was just a nice human. I didn't know her obviously as well as Phyllis did, but you know, Phyllis said, losing Rosemary Gully last July was a huge shock to me and the rest of the world. It was not expected and totally not in our plans. I was very sad for quite a time and couldn't come to terms with this loss. Eventually, I had a session with Janice Carlson, our wonderful medium, and that brought much peace and comfort. Much information came through validating the contact. When we first communicated with Rosemary shortly after she passed into the spirit world, we asked if she had a message for fate readers. Her sense of humor was evident when she said, "Wish you were here." She said that she is available for answering questions regarding her books now that she has a broader understanding and even better perspective of the spirit side. The latest message from Rosemary for fate readers is, don't let your political affiliation stop you from taking care of the climatic health of our planet. Janice Carlson related that another friend and departed colleague, David Godwin, meets Rosemary at least once a week for coffee or drinks. They also watch movies together, mainly sci-fi. Did you know you'd be doing that in the afternoon? About once a month. They have a similar sense of humor. He said Rosemary has more friends in heaven than he does. Then he laughs. I think he means she's more likely to socialize than he is. He prefers quiet study and space exploration. It sounds like life goes on the same in the afterlife, just in a different frequency. Another message I received directly from Rosemary is to be happy. Remember the happy times we shared and all the adventures we experienced through the years, from the East Coast at Gettysburg and other Civil War sites, to the West Coast hanging out with the Burroughs in Arizona, to Sedona, to Jerome, Arizona, to Fortune Caribbean cruises. We have had some grand times, and it's better to focus on those instead of being sad. We have her wonderful legacy of all the amazing books she has written, and we will continue to offer all the fate compilations that she has wisely arranged. So, I think that is very reassuring, and I totally can picture the two of them. They were such partners in crime. So, I just think it's nice to know that so much of Rosemary comes through when there's a reading that she's involved in, because it's we wonder, right? And she found David. They found each other on the other side, and they enjoy each other's company just like they did. I can only imagine Phyllis, David, and Rosemary in the afterlife, right? That's going to be interesting. Now, this is when Phyllis first moved to North Carolina. She lived in Minnesota forever. But, well, maybe it's not right when she moved there, but it was close to. So this part is my new neighbors. There have been reportings of Bigfoot in the county where I live in North Carolina. Maybe when the dogs and I are walking in the woods here, we can meet them face to face. Back in the day, I used to make Atlantean crystal wands in Minnesota. A Bigfoot manifested itself in my dining room for just a brief moment, looking at the wands on the table. I could imagine it thinking, what are these crazy humans up to now? That being seemed benign and very intelligent, thoughtful even. I wasn't frightened of it at all. I look forward to more peaceful encounters. I have not asked if she came across one, right? So I think that's going to be a question I have to ask her. She is intrepid. She really is. This is a woman, went through the flooding from the hurricane last year. And she's fierce. She had her hips replaced. She had that massive stroke. And she is so amazing. I really, really love her a lot. And this, I'm going to read this because this is another The Amazing Godwin from Spirit with Janice channeling him. And the question that Phyllis had for him was, according to CNN, astronomers found a potentially habitable planet called Proxima b around the star Proxima Centauri, which is only 4.2 light years from Earth. Now researchers have traced a second signal they believe belongs to a super-Earth orbiting the same star, increasing the intrigue of this neighboring planetary system and its potential. Does David think there is life on this planet? Does he ever go there? And the answer: David says there are many such planets in the cosmos that are habitable for humans. He has visited this one and says it did remind him quite a bit of Earth. When visiting planets, he does not always get out of his spacecraft. Sometimes he and other spirits with him just orbit and scan it. His particular spacecraft is crystal powered. It's interdimensional travel of some kind, so they are cloaked from view when orbiting planets. Space travel is very popular in the spirit world. Some of it is for pleasure. Others travel for research and angel intervention purposes. I would not have thought that. David says the size of these vessels varies. His seats 6, but they can be a lot bigger than that. I'm unable to tell you much about the spirits he's traveling with, except he mentions someone named Carl. Doing road trips, dude? So that is very likely Carl Wischke, owner of Llewellyn Publications, where David and I both worked. He passed a couple of years ago. Question: does David know if there are beings, aliens, people living within the earth? If so, what are they like? Is the earth hollow like some believe? How much has the government been digging tunnels, etc., for travel and storage and escape? Answer: David said there is dormant alien DNA under deep layers of earth. He says the earth is not hollow, it has a molten core. He says the octopus is an example of alien DNA on earth. It is more likely that aliens live under the seafloor than under dry earth. There are many underground networks. They are located under government buildings and military bases. They are built for hiding, storage, and escape. David meets Rosemary at least once a week for coffee or drinks. They watch movie sci-fi about once a month. So he confirmed what Rosemary had said. And, one of the things that I love learning about from Mary, who does skyships over cashiers.com. It's a website, it's a newsletter. It's I'm going to have her on because I miss her. So we're going to do that soon. But she is the one who told me about a base that is under the Cherokee National Forest. And when she was telling me that, I go to the place that she says is where the entry is. And it blew my mind because I don't think it's an improbability that you could make that work, right? It's just amazing the things that we don't know are done with our dollars. So I will get her on and we will have that conversation and you will love her. Her name is Mary Joyce, Joyce. And she also lives in North Carolina. And she is also intrepid. And this is someone that I have met personally. When David goes to play poker, I'm really close to her, and she will come down and have lunch with me. We'll go and meet somewhere. She is one of the best. She is the person who first told me about John Kerry being in Antarctica on the day of Obama's second inauguration. And that was when there was so much discussion, which died off. I mean, it was like a 7-day wonder, right? And heads of state were there. Representatives of Britain were there. There were so many people coming and going, and you should Google that. But it was so bizarre because I did not realize that John Kerry was not in Washington for Obama's inauguration. And then she published an article, and I went to, when I was reading it, she had provided links for photos. I cannot think of the name of the company right now, but it's always involved in huge conspiracy type things. But they actually were hiring people to go there because there was so much work going on. I went and looked at the applications as if I were going to be filling one out to go. And the requisites were pretty intense. Some of the primary ones were you can't have your own communication device. You will not be communicating with family and friend over anything except for their communication systems. They had set up like little Quonset huts to live in. And I mean, it's a great gig if you were into that. It was something that I really didn't expect to find all this information. And the company, I will find it and post it on my Facebook. But it was cool. But if you will go and look at skyships over Cashiers, CASHIERS.com. That is a great website, and she has so much conspiracy information. And I'm really not a strong conspiracy theorist. Do I think that there's stuff? I'm sure there's stuff. I'm sure that our government does everything but what we think they're doing with our money. Okay. Um, I'm not always sure they're doing stuff for the greater good. I'm not always sure they're doing stuff for our good. I mean, I am very skeptical. I am such a libertarian. I just am like, if you're going to take my taxes, take care of people that need it, take care of women and children, take care of the sick, and keep our roads and hospitals going. We're good. Don't send it to other places until everybody here is taken care of. And so, but I do want everyone taken care of. But I just think we don't need to be the only country doing that. It needs to be a group effort. So anyway, I digress. But so when I found Mary's website, and I found her years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And like I said, we've broken bread together. She's not a nut job. She is one of the nicest people. She's she's got that mindset. Like my husband is very analytical, very math brained, very, da, 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 da. I'm just kind of like, oh, we're having fun. But still with my work, I'm pretty, serious about that. But she brings the receipts. Okay. When all this talk was going on about different bases and different places, about hollowed out places, she's the first person that ever told me about the moon ringing. Okay. And I thought that was hokum. I nicely thought that was hokum, but it was so unexpected. And then I found a bunch of different articles, not hers, but I found a bunch of different articles on that topic. You'd be amazed what is out there and how long it's been out there and how many different things are not what we're told they are. I am so amazed by not just Mary's research. I mean, so many people that I follow. Stanton Friedman was quite educational for me because when I first met him or first interviewed him, I did not anticipate the knowledge I was going to get on UFO research. He was the original civilian Roswell researcher, and he also had receipts. And when I started reading his books, I was like, holy cats, this is really interesting stuff. So I'm very blessed with the people that I've met through the time of doing my work. And I just don't have enough time to tell you how wonderful I think they are. Now, this is a really long article. I don't think I'm going to do that. And I think that one sounds gross, and I don't want to do that. It's like, The Haunted Berengaria Hotel. And this is by Richard Powell. And Richard Powell is amazing. Now, this has got a neat picture. And that's the name of it. Near Prodamos, the highest village in the Troodos Mountains of Cyprus, the crumbling structure of the once luxurious Berengaria Hotel still attracts tourists. The visitors are not the rich and famous of old, but the curious to see firsthand what remains of one of the most haunted hotels on the island. When it opened in 1931, it was state of the art. In the 1960s, a large swimming pool was added. In its heyday, this popular mountain hotel attracted local and international tourists, including kings, politicians, and movie stars. The cooler mountain air was a relief from the heat of the plains. The tourists it attracts today are looking for more unnatural events. Named after the wife of Richard the Lionheart, Berengaria, this hotel was the most luxurious hotel in Cyprus. What happened to this 80-room lavish hotel to have it end up as it is now? Some say it was the fact they did not keep up with the times. Little or no money was put into modernizing the hotel. There were no ensuite facilities in most rooms. The furniture was not updated. The pool was on the shady side of the hotel. Guests did not come back and profits fell. The theory that attracts far more attention is the story of the family that owned it. With the help of many locals from the village, Mr. Kokolos built the most luxurious hotel in Cyprus at the time. For over 50 years, it was the place to go for a week or weekend. The owner died and left the hotel to his 3 sons who had promised their father to work together. This did not happen. The sons were greedy and fought about profit sharing and put no money into maintaining the hotel. The guests left and the hotel closed. Over the next years, the 3 brothers all died mysteriously. The oldest reportedly throwing himself off a bridge due to his financial situation. Besides the brothers, there are 3 other spirits said to be haunting the derelict hotel. The first is the manager that hung himself. He appears to be trying to encourage visitors to come in and book rooms. The second, a woman found drowned in the pool is waiting to find her murderer in order to seek revenge. The third, villagers report seeing a dark-haired woman in a white dress standing in one of the windows. Some say on a quiet night, if you listen closely, you can hear the music from the nightclub and chatter from the casino. Being well and truly haunted, the building attracts many visitors curious about paranormal activities. This deteriorating hotel is looking very scary now. Floors are rotting through, stairways are unsafe, wallpaper is peeling, the windows are smashed, the pool is a frog pond, and part of the building is collapsing. Being in a wonderful location, high in the mountains with views in all directions, and 15 minutes from the ski resort on Mount Olympus, the hotel has sparked a lot of interest in rebuilding and opening it again. There have been at least 3 attempts at refurbishing to its former glory, but for one reason or another, they all have failed. It was sold again last year to another investment group. Maybe this time the Berengaria can attract the rich and famous again. Okay, Lori, no, we're not going there. So that is Lori's idea of a good time. But just so y'all know, I love doing this kind of show too. I love talking to guests. I love learning about them and bringing them to you. And we're going to go back to doing that. But periodically, I love sharing fate with you. So thanks for letting me. And we will be back. I'll be back Wednesday with Paranormal Experienced, and I will be back next Sunday with Fate. So we will see y'all. Same cat time, same cat channel. Be blessed. Have a great week and love somebody. Good night.